Good day everyone, this is Margo Menpin of Block Baby 8 together with...
Hello everyone, it's your boy Eugene.
We are your presenters for today about a part of Mr. Andresito Acuna's book, Philosophical Analysis, which is about Unit 2, Analysis of Knowledge Claims, Module 1 and 3. So without further ado, let's get started. Module 1, Analysis of Statement. This module will start with something you're already familiar with, type of sentences. The topic will then move to the nature of statements, as well as the basic principle of statement analysis. It will conclude with a discussion of 3 logic principles that govern the truth values of a statement. In today's topic, let us remember the different types of sentences we've learned in high school or even in elementary perhaps. What are your plans for today? Who is our professor in Philo 1? When you ask these questions, what type of sentence do you use? Right, you're using an interrogative sentence. How about these? Clean your room, or shut the front door. When we issue these commands, what are we using? Imperative sentence, correct. However, when you express delight like, that was really great, or you're surprised, what a game! We know for a fact that we are using... Yup, that is an exclamatory sentence. We daydream or we express a desire or wish such as, I hope to pass my Philo 1 subject this semester, or I hope that the COVID-19 pandemic ends soon. These are what type of sentences? Expletive sentences, right. Let's keep this type of sentences in mind because they will come handy for our discussion today. One of the most important use of language is asserting a knowledge claim with a sentence. And in today's linguistic conventions, the linguistic bearer of knowledge is commonly referred to as the proposition or a statement. We are all aware that interrogative, imperative, exclamatory, and expletive sentences are simply uttered. What do I mean by that? Itong klase ng mga pangungusap na ito, sinasabi lang sila. Hindi natin pinagtatalunan kung totoo ba yung stinate na sentence o hindi because they do not have truth values. Let me give you an example. Kapag inutusan kita na clean your room, this command is neither true or false. Kahit pa hindi mo ako sinunod, nung sinabi kong linisin mo yung kwarto mo, hindi pa rin siya mali. The command is not falsified. Hindi ko masasabi na mali yung hindi mo pagsunod dun sa command. Another example is, after watching a game, napasigaw ka ng, oh my God! You haven't made a knowledge claim. So, you haven't said anything true or incorrect. And because nothing was declared and nothing was denied, these sentences have no truth values. When it comes to using declarative sentences, to assert or deny something in the world that can be either true or false, like my cat is black or that boy is 8 years old, it is a different case. You know that you have used declarative sentences to make a knowledge claim, and you know as well that the proposition or statement is the linguistic bearer of knowledge claim. This use of declarative sentence to establish a knowledge claim is very important not just in logic but also in epistemology. Moving on with sentence and statement, let's do a little refresher. In Unit 1, you found out the difference between a word and a concept. For the pedagogical purpose, a word is made of letters and concepts is made up of ideas. In addition, sentence is made up of words. However, what we are not so familiar with is that the statement, which is the bearer of knowledge, is made up of concepts. Concepts as well as statements are constructs. Ito yung mga convenient linguistic devices na inimbento ng mga philosophers para makagawa ng importanteng distinctions o yung difference or contrast between similar things or people. The uses of these constructs are made stable by stipulative definitions of philosophers playing the same language game. Okay, so sa konseptong dog, hindi yung word na dog itself. Pwede ma-express ito gamit sa iba't ibang mga salita, but in the same language. A great example is canine. It can be used to express the concept dog. We can also use another language to express the concept dog, which is in Filipino, aso, diba? So similarly, the knowledge claim, the cat is on the mat, can be expressed by another sentence in the same language, like the cat is on top of the mat, or the mat has a cat on top. Pwede rin naman ma-express ito sa ibang lengguwahe tulad ng sa Filipino na ang pusa ay nasa ibabaw ng banig. Let's have another example. The philosophy books are in the drawer. It can be expressed by another sentence in the same language like the philosophy books are inside the drawer or the drawer has philosophy books inside it. Pwede rin naman sa Filipino na ang mga libro sa filosofiya ay nasa loob ng kahon. Consequently, we can have many terms not necessarily in the same language expressing the same knowledge claim. This is an important linguistic convention among philosophers of language. The use of a declarative sentence to assert a knowledge claim marks an important distinction in philosophy. The philosopher is confronted with an age-old problem of language relationship with the world. This issue has troubled philosophers since the beginning of time. The term proposition, rather than statement, is preferred by some philosophers and logicians. They do agree, however, that the truth and falsehood are properties of statements expressed by sentences on certain occasions, in order to make a knowledge claim about what is true and what is not true. But, in any case, statement and propositions are used almost synonymously. When we actually use a sentence to make a knowledge claim by asserting or denying something in the world, this situation constitutes to making a statement. So many philosophers accept that sentences could not be true or false because a single sentence often contains two or more statements or knowledge claims. Ibig sabihin, ang isang sentence daw ay naglalaman ng dalawa o mahigit pang mga pinagsamang statements, kaya ina-accept nila na ang sentence hindi siya pwedeng maging true or false. So therefore, it is important to differentiate between the sentence and the statement if you want to play the language game of philosophers when they conduct philosophical analysis. It is said that a sentence is made up of words, so obviously it is immaterial. But what about the statement it expresses? Statement, like concepts, are philosophers' constructs. The construct, on the other hand, is necessary for philosophers to evaluate the truth values of statements and, more importantly, to assess an argument. Let me also repeat that in the literature of philosophy of language and logic, the term proposition is suggested instead of a statement. These two are not exactly identical, but they are very similar. Next, how do we analyze the truth values of a statement? The sentence, "The cat is on the mat," is a declarative sentence that can express that the cat is on the mat. You can succeed in expressing the statement provided that there is actually a mat and a cat in this world. Also, the state of affairs that the cat is on the mat actually obtains. What does it mean when the state of affairs is obtained? It indicates that something occurs or it is true. It's also observable or provable through senses. There are three things to remember. If you were able to prove these 2 points, you have successfully used a sentence to assert a knowledge claim that you have verified is true. But if the case is that there is a mat and if there is a cat, but the state of affairs that the cat is on the mat does not obtain, meaning hindi totoo na may cat doon sa mat, then you have succeeded in verifying that a knowledge claim is false. However, if there is no mat and there is no cat, you have not even succeeded in expressing a knowledge claim at all. The use of a nonverbal reality like state of affairs is the fountainhead of many important concepts and many theories in philosophy. The nonverbal reality is a method in determining the truth value of a knowledge claim by an appeal to something external to it. Moving on, there are 3 principles that governs the analysis of the truth value statement, according to the formal logicians. Aristotle, who is an ancient philosopher, referred to them as the 3 laws of thought. The first law is called the Principle of Identity, which states that if a statement is true, then it is true. Alternatively, the converse, if a statement is false, then it is false. This means that the truth value of a statement is stable over time. If we try to analyze it using a formula, many may say that it will be A is equals A. But the formula A equals A speaks of equality. It doesn't define A as the same. So, what the principle of identity is actually trying to say is that A is A, that is, every A is itself the same. An example will be the statement, a non-venomous snake is not poisonous. If you assess the statement, fear of poisonous bite from a non-venomous snake is irrational and wrong, because non-venomous snakes cannot have venom. Another one is when you conclude that the statement, all bachelors are unmarried men, is correct. The statement's truth value is retained indefinitely over time. This, of course, assumes that the verbal convention regarding the use of the concept bachelor has remained unchanged. Kasi ang statement, hindi pwedeng totoo siya sa kasalukuyan, and with the blink of an eye, it turns out to be false. This will create havoc or chaos in logic. In short, the principle of identity is only applicable to a world that is constant, regular, and unchanging. To further discuss this module, here's my partner Eugene de la Cruz.
Thank you very much, Margo. Now, we're going to talk about the principle of non-contradiction. According to Richard Kadri, being able to embrace contradictions is a sign of intelligence or insanity. Why? Because one fundamental truth that we all know about life is that something cannot be true and false at the same time. Yes, you have the right to argue that some things are half true, half false, technically ganyan, technically ganto, pero ganto din, mala-mala if you will. Pero in this lesson, we are talking about things that are 100% only true or false, not true and false. Kasi otherwise, they would not make sense. Pero yung ganong klaseng principle, hindi lang yun ginagamit sa logic. It is also used in discourse. And we call that the principle of non-contradiction. Now, a common mistake that most people do is to say a sentence and then follow it up with a statement that directly contradicts or opposes the truth, the validity, or the point, the authenticity of the first one. And sometimes, using even the same line of logic. If we follow up a statement with something that contradicts it, that verifies or confirms that one of the sentences is actually false. They make your statement seem weak and questionable and makes you look like you don't know what you're talking about, implying that you have no complete understanding of the topic that you are tackling. That takes credibility away from the speaker. It makes you look like you're uninformed, or worse, hypocritical o kaya naman nagsisinungaling. Pero guys, don't confuse the principle of non-contradiction sa concept ng inconsistency, and although they are quite similar and they may have similar effects, they do have quite the fundamental difference. And para mas maintindihan natin, let's use examples. Look at these statements. Ryan was a real person. He never existed. Think about that for a moment. Those sentences are contradictory. We should note that the first sentence is affirmative, while the second one is the denial. Pag yung isa sa kanila ay true, then automatically, false na yung isa. If Ryan never existed, then of course, he isn't a real person. And if he was a real person, then he existed, which disproves the latter assumption. Ngayon, tingnan nyo yung mga statements na to. Mikasa is blonde. She has brown hair. Those sentences are inconsistent. And yes, kapag totoo yung isa, then automatically, di ba, false na rin yung isa. Pero paano kung pareho silang mali? Sa sentence natin, si Mikasa ay merong black hair. So, pareho silang mali. Hindi siya blonde, hindi rin brown yung hair ni Mikasa. Ito yung main difference. In contradictory statements, if the affirmative is true, then the denial is always false and vice versa. Kailangan laging may isang tama. Pero in inconsistent statements, pwedeng maging false pareho. So, kailangan mong i-analyze na mabuti kung inconsistent ba or contradictory. Odds are, kapag imposible na maging false pareho, kasi parang fundamentally contradictory talaga sila, then probably they are contradictory. They may be similar, pero they have differences and nuances. Now, let us move on to the last principle, which is the principle of the excluded middle, which states that something is either true or false and nothing else. In other words, it only has two truth values. For an example, let us talk about a belief. 15-foot tall humans once roamed the earth. There are only two possible truth values. It's either true or not. There's no in between. They cannot be true and false at the same time. Am I right? This principle is called the principle of the excluded middle because it excludes the presumed third value, which is probability. Probability is the likeliness of something to happen, to be true, or to occur, and it can be expressed in numerical values. But what does it mean to exclude this third value? For the next example, let's invent a religion, which we would call eugenism. Please remember that according to this principle, something can only be true or false and nothing else. Using this example, we will not include the probability of eugenism being true compared to the countless other religions on earth. If we include them, syempre bababa yung chances na maging totoo yung eugenism. Pero at the end of the day, there are only two scenarios. It's either true or false yung eugenism. If we exclude the middle, the probability, then eugenism only has two truth values. It is either true or completely and undeniably bonkers or false, which we know that it is. Pero meron ding mga tinatawag na many-valued logic na tinitake into consideration niya yung probability and statistics. It is also to be noted that the principle of the excluded third middle does not apply to empirical statements. We hope na naiintindihan niyo yung mga lessons na tinakal natin today. And not only that, pero makonceptualize niyo and magamit niyo sa sarili niyong pag-iisip, maybe even in discourse.
Module 3, Types of Knowledge Claims. This module will center on the epistemological classification of knowledge claims, which is needed in order to internalize complex and sophisticated abilities in argument composition. Moritz Schlick and the logical positivists of the 1930s established a theory of knowledge based on David Hume's epistemology. They embrace Hume's epistemological framework, which states that there are only two sources of knowledge. First is reason, and second is perception. So if there is only two sources of knowledge, they can conclude that there can only be two types of knowledge, which are the following. First is formal language under the faculty of reason, and empirical language from the five senses, or perception. In the language of Hume, formal knowledge is intuitively and demonstratively certain. Common examples for formal knowledge comes from logic, mathematics, algebra, and geometry. On the other hand, empirical knowledge comes from the natural and social sciences like physics, biology, sociology, psychology, and etc. All knowledge claims, according to logical positivists, can only be formal or empirical. This was the basic epistemological framework proposed by Hume, which was accepted and developed by logical positivists into a full-blown theory of knowledge. Although nawala yung credibility ng mga logical positivists sa field ng philosophy, ginagamit pa rin itong distinction na to sa sciences hanggang ngayon. The division of the sciences into formal and empirical is still reflected in the epistemological framework developed by the logical positivists. To sum it all up, formal knowledge would be guaranteed by the faculty of reason, whereas empirical knowledge would be guaranteed by the faculty of sense perception. Therefore, we can only have two types of knowledge claims, namely formal and empirical. In Acuna's book, it is stated that the bifurcation between the two types of knowledge claims led to the bifurcation of only two epistemological types of meaningful statements, which are the analytic statements and the empirical statements. When formal knowledge claim is made, it is made by using an analytic statement. Examples are, the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the square of the two sides. A square has four equal sides. If Cain killed Abel, then Abel is dead. On the other hand, when an empirical knowledge claim is made, the claim is made using an empirical statement. Examples are, the sun will rise tomorrow. Dinosaurs once populated the earth. and all things fall down. Remember that in current epistemology, empirical claims and empirical statements are almost synonymously used. Also, formal claim and analytic statements are also used synonymously, so we shall adopt the same linguistic convention. So, yung dichotomy or division ni Hume sa relation of ideas and matter as a fact led to the bifurcation of the two theories of truth. This means that we verify an empirical claim by the use of correspondence theory of truth, and we verify a formal claim by the use of coherence theory of truth. Ano nga bang ibig sabihin ng mga to? When we say correspondence theory of truth, this is the use of five senses to verify empirical claims, while the coherence theory of truth is the use of faculty of reason when verifying an analytic claim. Mas ma-explain to when you reach Module 5, Theories of Truth. You must know how to identify knowledge claims based on epistemic characteristics. This would pave the way for you to apply any theories of truth that you choose. Actually, empirical claims are easy to recognize, identify, and utter. Simply describing yourself, your classmates, or other people, and you can also describe your surroundings too. Doing these things, yung pagde-describe, gumagamit ka ng declarative sentence to assert an empirical knowledge. Kailangan mo lang i-make sure na what you are asserting or denying exists in the world. Examples are the following. My classmates are very attentive during synchronous classes. I am wearing a green blouse today. The Menpin family has 5 dogs. There are dormitories for students located inside the UPDEP campus. Some of our classmates are wearing eyeglasses. Kung mapapansin nyo sa mga ginamit na examples, matutukoy dito yung truth or falsehood ng mga claims sa pamamagitan ng paggamit ng one or a combination of your 5 senses. Ibig sabihin, gumagamit ka ng correspondence theory of truth. You know what observations you are going to make in order to determine the truth or the falsity of the empirical claims above. And to further discuss this module, I am once again calling my partner, Eugene de la Cruz. Eugene, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that, Margo. And now, pag-uusapan naman natin yung analytic statements. Analytic statements are statements wherein the truth value depends on the meaning of its terms. Kung nabasa nyo dun sa reading, it says there that the statement, puppies are young dogs, seems like an empirical observation. After all, nakita mo naman yun you can perceive it with your sense of sight. Kaya mo nasabing young dog yung puppy kasi maliit siya and hindi siya mukhang fully developed. However, if we analyze the sentence further, we can see that it is actually a claim that the word puppy refers to a young or juvenile dog which isn't fully grown or matured. The word literally means young dogs. And ginagamit yun if you are referring to young dogs. So, puppies are young dogs. Let us remember that language is made up, pero collective yun, and napagkasunduan yun ng sobrang daming tao. The type of knowledge claim used in this example is called formal or analytic. Meanwhile, the statement can be referred to as an analytic statement. To understand it better, let us give a characteristic of an analytic statement para di na siya ma-confuse with empirical. According to Kant, an analytic judgment contains the predicate in the subject. Ngayon, tingnan naman natin yung examples na binigay sa reading. Bachelors are unmarried men. Fathers are male parents. Pretty obvious, di ba? Unless di mo alam kung ano yung meaning ng word na bachelor or father. Basta ang point is, the predicate is contained in the subject. The predicate basically gives definition to the subject, and that definition can be found in the subject itself. It's because those subjects are formally defined in the English language. Hume's described those definitions as intuitively and demonstratively certain. Kasi, would you say that bachelors are married? Of course not, kasi that would be contradictory to the meaning of the word bachelor itself. Now, here's an interesting thought. Not all unmarried men can be considered bachelors. Although some would refer to the word bachelor as traditional as it can be, like men who are not married and have never been married, some would like to refer themselves as bachelor even if they are divorced. If they are ready to go back into the dating scene, sabi nung iba, bachelor pa rin daw yun kung tawagin. Pero in this example, we would be using the formally defined because that's what we are talking about. Hindi ba yung mga salita ay gawa-gawa lang din naman? So using the coherence theory, i-check natin if the terms that encapsulate the concepts of father and bachelor are used the same way in many different language games. When I say bachelor or father, do I mean the same things that you refer to when you say father and bachelor? Are we referring to the same things? Do we mean the same things? Is it formally defined in the linguistic system that we are using, which is English? If it does, then yes, you have passed the coherence check. And hindi lang sa ating dalawa yun, pero to all the people who use this particular language and abide by its linguistic systems, if it means the same thing, then you pass the coherence check. Since ang katotohanan ng isang analytic statement ay nasa meaning ng words niya, then kapag kinontradict mo or inoppose mo yung established meanings or concepts ng word na to, if you're going against the very intention of that concept or word, then you are false in the context na ginagamit mo siya. Hume states that a statement is analytical if the denial always leads to contradiction or absurdity. After all, kapag sinabi mo na polygamy is staying committed to a single partner, then people will think that you are absurd. Kasi alam natin ang literal na meaning ng word ng polygamy, di ba? Ngayon, paano naman kapag sinabi natin na all bachelors are unhappy? First of all, isa yung generalization. Pero hindi siya analytic statement. Isa siyang empirical observation. Kasi hindi naman directly nakakabit yung concept ng unhappiness sa concept ng bachelorhood. It is something lang na na-observe mo through your senses. And as you probably get by now, the paradigm of analytic statements come from formal systems. The truth of a statement, analytic statement, comes from its adherence to a system. And dun sa examples kanina, adherence to a linguistic system, pero hindi lang siya limited dun. Pero even mathematical systems and others. Halimbawa, 4 plus 4 is equal to 8. It adheres to an arithmetic system and it can be referred to as well-formed formula or WFF, and that is an example of an analytic statement. In the future, pag-uusapan din natin yung tautological statements, which are statements that are true either by necessity, virtue, or by logic. They can also be the same thing said twice. Halimbawa, if what you say is true, it is true. Either I pass or I don't. Can you deny those statements? No, kasi tautological sila. Ngayon, merong controversy kung ilan ba yung types of meaningful statements. Kasi merong mga tao, specifically logical positivists, who argue that there are only two, empirical and analytic. Kasi sabi nila, if you cannot verify a statement, then it has no meaning. It is meaningless. Pero marami ding philosophers na hindi happy dun sa idea na yon. Kasi daw kapag ginamit mo yung ganong logic, then yung legal, political, aesthetic, moral, ethical, and religious statements plus more would be considered meaningless, which they don't agree with. Now, let us talk about the status of evaluative statements or evaluative claims. Hume is someone who does not agree with the idea that there are only two meaningful types of statements because to him, evaluative claims are not meaningless. According to Hume, the source of this judgment is passion and emotions. To him, these are genuine impressions that lead to ideas. And for him, those passion and emotions can be considered the anchor for a third source of knowledge. Evaluative claims have variety. Now, the following are examples from the reading. Moral statements. Sex without love is immoral. Religious statement. Polygamy is a sin. Aesthetic statement. Sunset is beautiful. Now, like empirical statements, you can also affirm or deny the validity, the truth value, or the authenticity of those statements previously mentioned. But the difference is you use a different source of knowledge or methodology than you would otherwise use in an analytic or empirical statement. Meron ding variation of evaluative statement na ang dinidil naman is obligation, ganyan, or prohibition. And tawag doon is prescriptive for positive and prescriptive naman for negative. Example nun ay yung mga you should not kind of statements, yung mga nagsisimula sa you should not. Or it can also come in the form of orders or requests like don't cheat on your exam or study your lessons every day. In order to decide the theory of truth that you're going to apply, you must first decide the type of knowledge claim that you wish to verify. We hope na naintindihan nyo yung lessons. If hindi pa masyado clear lahat, you can watch the video again or feel free to ask questions and we would try our best to really answer them. Yun po, thank you for listening and may you have a great day.